let's get into the topic of the week. And we've been hyping this up on Twitter a little bit, but everyone that is a fan of this podcast or follows us should know what's coming. We need to talk about this defense. And more importantly, we need to talk about this defensive scheme. So, Matt, I'm going to let you go ahead and give the rundown of how things have been going and the vibe of everyone online before I kind of give my little rant that I've been hyping up for a little bit.
Well, even before this preseason, just going back to last year, a lot has been made about the philosophy and the scheme of our defense and the rigidity of it, and how Ulbrich and Saleh have been unwilling to really change their ways. And a lot of that has to do with how they even just approach things pre-snap. And how we were talking about with the Falcons and how they knew what was coming. And it was very easy for them to game plan around that. And it had great results. So it's this kind of mentality that we saw all of last year, which led to one of the worst defenses in the league. And a lot of fans are rightfully scared. What if things are just that teams are going to be like the Falcons, and that they figured us out. They figured this scheme out, and we're going to have another bad season on defense. Not because we don't have the talent this time, but because the scheme is outdated. The scheme has been figured out, and they are too stubborn to change. And it's a legitimate fear. It's a legitimate concern. It's definitely one that's been on my mind the last week or two. But I think you really need to dig down deep into what this defensive scheme is in order to really understand it from their point of view, and to maybe just see what else is out there. Like, how can we transition?
Yeah, that's going to be the key is how can we transition? And more importantly, will there even be one? Because there's no guarantee that there will be. And I think that's important for everyone to remember at the top, is that there's nothing that indicates that any change is coming. Nothing. Not from any history of this defense, not from any history of our coaching staff, nothing. There is no reason to believe that things are going to change. The reason that things changed with Robert Saleh in particular 2 years ago when he was in San Francisco, and everyone said, oh, look at him, he found ways to go about the defense and counter things. They lost pretty much every major contributor on their defensive line that year. They were really lacking pass rushers. They couldn't run the scheme that they wanted to run because they were lacking the pass rush that makes it potent to start with. And they had a very, very experienced secondary that had been playing together, at least the two safeties and some of the corners, for a while. The other corner was Richard Sherman, who is a Hall of Famer who had been in the scheme his entire career, had a great relationship with Saleh, and is one of the smartest football players to ever touch the field. They had the ability to change on the fly and to try out some new wrinkles and add some different things to their defense to counteract their lack of production on the defensive line and really play into the strength of their secondary. Last year, the Jets didn't have any of that. And they're installing a new defense. They're teaching these players their scheme. They're teaching the rules. They're teaching the keys and the tendencies that they focus on for offenses where to allow their players to click and close as fast as possible. And there was a lot of youth. And it was expected to be a rough transition. The Jets were lacking a lot of talent on defense. Their biggest defensive acquisition in Carl Lawson never played a snap for the entire regular season. They were starting a fifth-round, second-year player at corner who had like 3 or 4 starts under his belt the entire time the year before, another sixth-round rookie on the outside, on the other side, and an undrafted free agent second-year player in the slot, and another rookie in the slot subbing in with an undrafted free agent. They went through about 8 different safeties over the course of last year. I know everyone was expecting for me to come on here and rip a hole into Ulbrich and Saleh. What the heck else were they supposed to do? They couldn't change on the fly and install a crazy new complex defense like we see from Dean Pease and the Falcons, or Wink Martindale in Baltimore, or Bill Belichick in his times in the Patriots, or Wade Phillips when he was with the Rams, or when he was with Denver, or anywhere in between. They couldn't just create a new defensive scheme, teach it in a week on these guys that were practice squad players before they were having to start for the Jets out of necessity and expect things to work out. So I want to take away a little bit of what we saw from last year and the horrors that we saw from last year and think that there is going to be some level of improvement from there. Now we need to get to the bad part. And the bad part is that this is still a disgustingly simple defense, and that they are running quite literally the equivalent of a high school scheme, and that these are the same sort of principles and coverages that you're teaching average players all across the country that aren't even going to sniff a college offer, let alone the NFL. The NFL knows how to beat this defense. Cover 3 press bail took over the NFL after the Seahawks got good in the early 2010s, and multiple coaches from that coaching tree got head coaching jobs and coordinator jobs all over the league, and a bunch of other teams started running it. So a bunch of offenses had to prepare for it. And the NFL, as anyone who follows this sport is going to know, is a copycat league. Every team is going to take something from any other team, and if they see they have a tough defense that they can't figure out and they watch another team beat it, they're just going to copy the game plan. That's to be expected. So when you look at this defense and you look at this scheme, there's only so much talent can do to improve it. Point blank, period. One of the main problems that the Eagles were getting the Jets with, and I posted a clip of this on Twitter, was a sail concept, was where they scored their opening touchdown to Dallas Goedert. Came on the same play. A sail concept, for those that don't know, is a combination of 3 receivers to a side, usually involving a receiver, a tight end, and a running back, where the receiver is going to run a go route, the tight end is going to run a corner to the same side, and a running back is going to run out as a little flat or a flare to draw a defender underneath. And what it does is it creates a high-low conflict for whatever curl flat defender is playing that cover 3. The go route takes away the vertical, the tight end comes around behind the curl flat, and the running back out in front of him gives him a choice. He can either get depth and cover the tight end on the corner and leave the running back wide open in the flat with room to run, or he can come up shallow to play the running back and the tight end will be open behind it. It's a noted cover 3 beater, and it has been for years. It's not a complex play call. It's a play call that's in every single offense in the NFL. And any single offensive coordinator worth their salt is going to be able to see cover 3 pre-snap and either audible to it or have it in the game plan to expect it. They should know this is coming. And from what I heard from Saleh today, when he was asked about this directly in terms of how he would feel about changing his defense or the philosophy difference between a guy like Dean Pease in Atlanta, who he was just coaching against, and himself, Saleh said all the right things you would hope to say, and say that we've been in this scheme and coaching it and been around it for so long. We know all of its weaknesses. We know how teams want to attack us. We know where they're going to want to focus. We know the beaters. So they know how to key in on it and hopefully react to those plays faster and take them away. I hope he's right. That's all I can say, is I hope he's right. Because I went back and I checked, Matt, on the first drive of the game on defense against the Falcons, where the Jets defensive backups are playing against the Falcons starters. I'm being 100% serious when I say this, and I really wasn't expecting to see this, but this is what I saw. They called spot drop cover 3 bail on the first 5 straight plays. So every play, the first 5 plays, was cover 3 with about 8 yard steps from the corners. Exactly the same alignment. Any shift from the Falcons, they'd move a tight end over. The safeties would switch responsibilities based on the offensive strength. Same play call, cover 3. Falcons ate it up. That's a problem. Let me I don't care if it's preseason. Go ahead. Yeah.
So after watching that against the Falcons and even the Eagles, how much of that did you see last year during the regular season?
Not as often. Was it the similar amount of coverages? Yes. Was it mainly cover 3 and cover 6 on early downs with some cover 1 or some blitzes mixed in on third down? Yes. But very rarely did I see them line up in the exact same play over and over and over for the entirety of a drive. The Falcons were down in the red zone. The first time they got in the red zone, they called cover 3. It was a run play. The Jets stopped it short for a couple of yards. They switched to a cover 2 the next play, went back to cover 3 on third down, and that's when they forced a field goal.
This just got me thinking. Maybe all of this is by design right now in preseason, that they want to face these offenses, and they want these offenses to attack us like this. Because like he said, they all know the weaknesses, and they know that this is a weakness, and they want game reps against these weaknesses to really iron things out. And the best way to do that is to be as transparent as possible and see what your guys do in those situations.
And I think there is part of that, especially considering that these were the backup players and that these were not their regular starters on defense for the most part, although some did play as starters. But most of their players were backups, especially in the secondary, outside of LaMarcus Joyner, who I've already said plenty of my time on him and my worries for him. They had to give these guys an opportunity to get some tape on of them running their base coverages against some advantageous looks for offenses to see what needs to be cleaned up. I don't disagree that there is definitely something to that. But this is the point for me specifically. And this is where I've heard, and I know what you're alluding to, and I know you're very good at your job to where you're able to set things up like this. People have said maybe they're hiding things for the regular season. It's the preseason. They don't want to give away all of their defense and mix in all the wrinkles and put everything on tape. And there's absolutely truth to that. By no means should the Jets be opening up their whole playbook during these preseason games. That said, as you said at the very start of the segment, Matt, philosophy, that's the problem. The philosophy of this defensive scheme and this coaching staff boils down to this very simple point. Offenses are incredibly multiple. They're incredibly complex. They're incredibly fast. They're incredibly deceptive. And so if you as a defensive player are trying to keep track of every single thing the offense is doing, follow to every shift, adjust to every motion, key in on every formation, and have all of this information going on in your head, when so many offenses, including our own that we run on this very same team, are built around deception and making a bunch of plays look similar from a bunch of varying different formations to confuse defenses and to get players thinking instead of attacking, their answer defensively is, we're not going to bother trying to outsmart you. We're not going to bother trying to take away what we think is going to be your number one option and build a coverage that's specifically built for this defense in this week. We're not going to be Bill Belichick. We're not going to be Wink Martindale, who is going to play press up at the line, mug his linebackers, send extra pressure as much as he possibly can, and dare you to adjust and play the way you're intending to play as you normally would against any other defense against his defense and see how it fares. And he's going to dictate the game and make the offense change what they're going to do. Salah's philosophy is basically the opposite of, we want to be passive. We want to keep everything in front of us. We want to rally and tackle. We want to be able to react when we need to react. We don't want our players to waste time thinking. Thinking is going to lead to miscommunication. Miscommunication leads to busts. Busts are big plays. Busts are touchdowns. We don't want that. We want to be able to, quote unquote, bend but not break, tighten up when we have to. And when we get teams into those third and long situations, when we know they're passing, that's when we'll mix in something. We'll send some extra pressure. We'll send a stunt. We'll send a corner blitz. We'll play some man coverage instead of zone. That's when we'll try and take our chances on those gotta have it situations. And the harsh reality is that there is evidence that this works and there's evidence that it doesn't. And both of those evidences are on our team. Because as I've said before, Matt, I did a study on this scheme last year during the season where I went through every single successful team that's run this scheme since the Seahawks first started it in about 2011. And one of the constants was that you needed a bunch of all-pro talent, basically at every level of your defense. You needed an offense that was top 10 in scoring. And the other constant was Robert Saleh. That he was at every single spot. He was in Seattle as a defensive quality control coach under Pete Carroll to learn the scheme at its best. He moves on to Jacksonville as a linebacker coach under Gus Bradley. They draft Jalen Ramsey. They sign AJ Bouye. They have a plethora of pass rushers on their defensive line. Their defense moves on to be great. Then he goes and gets the coordinator job in San Francisco. It takes a couple of years, but eventually they're one of the 5 best defenses in the league. Now he's in New York. There's something to that. And you look at Jeff Ulbrich, who I'm going to end this segment by defending, by saying, I've seen a lot of people come at Ulbrich and say, oh, he's got to go and he doesn't know what he's doing and he's just calling the same plays. He's doing what his head coach wants. This is not Jeff Ulbricht's defense. It's Robert Saleh's defense too. And to sit there and think that Ulbrich is the one fully deserving of blame and not realizing that this is a team-wide mentality that's been specifically crafted, and Saleh hired Jeff Ulbrich because they are both knowledgeable and skilled in this type of scheme, that's asinine to me. So if anyone's throwing crap at Jeff Ulbrich, they need to be throwing it at Robert Saleh too. That said, Jeff Ulbricht's history as a linebacker coach is exemplary. He has hand-built some of the best linebackers the NFL has seen from when they were in college and then when they got to the NFL, and the players that he had, where he had Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr at UCLA. He's able to go to Atlanta. He mentors Deion Jones. He adds, who's the other one that they had in Atlanta that played next to Deion Jones for a little bit? Foyesade Olakun just signed a giant deal with the Jaguars when he was under Jeff Ulbrich, had his best year of his career. These guys have proven that they know what they're doing. And so I'm not going to sit here and say I know better than these guys who have been around this scheme where it's been successful practically everywhere. But outside looking in, a lot has to go right. And it's not just going to be reps and experience and learning this defense better, and another year of experience is going to just automatically fix the problems. This is going to be a team-wide adjustment. The offense needs to click. The defensive line needs to be getting pressure. The corners need to stand up and be able to handle their pass off responsibilities. There's a lot that has to go right. And so I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm not concerned, because I think you can have all the talent in the world, but a sail concept is still going to be good against cover 3. Screens are still going to be good. Trap runs are still going to be good. You're going to have, like we saw Monday night with the Atlanta Falcons, they had a wide open play down the sideline to the tight end that wasn't Kyle Pitts in man coverage against Bryce Hall, and it was a switch release. Bryce Hall takes the inside vertical, while Marcus Joyner's the curl flat, who's supposed to carry the other number 2 vertical, gets caught in the backfield looking at the flat route, lets the guy run right behind him for a giant gain. Those plays are still going to be good. There's a reason the Falcons looked so good against the Jets, because Arthur Smith was trying like hell to beat the Jets defense in a preseason game. To me, that says they kicked their butts in practice. To me, that says the Jets were even better than we expected when the starters were in, and that Arthur Smith said, dang, I need to give my team some confidence. I need to go out there and prove that we can do this, and that I don't want to get embarrassed on national TV, and I want to make my guys look good. They were trying like hell to beat the Jets defense. They called every cover 3 beater they could think of to do it. That is a good sign to me. So I know a lot of people, and they still lost. Yeah. And they still lost. And the second things got to backups on backups, they still lost. I expected to come in here a few days ago and take the flamethrower, but I went back, I rewatched, I thought about things, I listened to these guys talk, and I'm not going to say that I'm falling for the speak, because I'm not, but I can look at history and say that it means just as much that you need a bunch of talent for this scheme to succeed, and that teams know how to have crafted a million different ways to beat it with play calling. All of that is true. It's just as true that Robert Saleh is the only coach that's been on every team where this has succeeded, and that means something too.
It really does. And you know what? I was kind of prepared to go into this and with the flamethrower as well. I have had my doubts about all of this, the philosophy, the scheme, and it just gets me thinking, like, what if it doesn't work? Because there's still a chance that it doesn't work.
There's reason to be doubtful. Let's be very clear about that. Is that it's not scorched earth, but there's reason to be concerned.
There's reason to be concerned. And that gets me thinking about transitions. If they were to transition to something, I don't think that they would transition to something that's completely different either. I think maybe they just start to let their trusted players on defense be a little bit more autonomous with decision makings, and maybe allow them to make a few pre-snap adjustments here and there, but while keeping most of the defense the same. Maybe something as small as that. I don't know. How do you see it? How do you think that they could transition to something else if it does seem like what they're doing just doesn't work anymore?
Yeah, this is the tricky part about that, is that And as Robert Saleh was basically asked this question directly in his press conference this afternoon, I don't remember the reporter that asked that, but whoever it was, I very much appreciate them for asking that question. And his answer was basically, we have our philosophy and that we are full trust in this scheme, and every other coordinator that runs a different defense is going to have full trust in their scheme as well. And we believe we know how to coach it right and iron out those kinks. And if it doesn't start going well, I don't think you're going to see a drastic change. I don't think you're going to see all of a sudden them go, well, this isn't working. We gotta change things up, because there's been times in history and plenty other stops at other teams where it wasn't working to start either. And it took sometimes 3 years to work. But when it did, it worked really well. And it took time to get to that point. I think these coaches know that, and I don't think it's going to be that much of a difference. You said something about audibling that personally I am 100% for, and I think would do a large part in fixing some of those predictability problems, because when the players can pick up on tendencies on the field better than the coaches maybe can on the sidelines, they need to be given the freedom to adjust plays and make a difference, like we saw CJ Mosley do against the Titans, where he wasn't literally allowed to do so. And Robert Saleh himself says when he was asked by the media after the game, he did something a linebacker in our system has never done before and changed a play at the line of scrimmage. You know why they don't allow their players to do that? For the same reason it's their philosophy to start with. They don't want them thinking. They don't want them at the very last second trying to call in a different audible and change the defense and adjust, and one guy doesn't hear it and it leads to a miscommunication and a coverage bust. It all goes back to that philosophy of we're going to be reactive. We want to just fan out our coverage, have 7 on the back end, trust our front 4 to get home, and we're going to keep everything in front of us and rally and tackle. You know where we're going to line up. We know how you're going to attack us. It's about who's going to be the faster man of the ball, who's going to make the bigger hit, effort, violence, technique, all of that they preach. I don't think you're going to see much of a change. This is what I think needs to be done. And it's so simple. Start disguising your coverages. That is the thing for me. You don't need to become Wink Martindale. You don't need to become Bill Belichick. You don't need to be morphing into a different defense every week based on whatever opponent you're playing. You don't need to become a cover 0 press man team that draws up exotic blitzes and sends linebackers from every gap under the sun. You just have to make it a little harder for that offense and that quarterback to guess what you're doing or know what you're doing, and make them hitch and give some extra time for that D-line to do what they're supposed to do. So for me, it's as simple as disguising your coverage on the back end slightly more often. They do it a little bit, but they really don't do it enough, and they don't do it enough early in the game. That's what I would like to see. Come out in a too high shell. Have one of your safeties right at the last second come down, have the other one rotate deep. You can still play cover 3. But the quarterback is going to take that extra half second and that extra hitch to go, oh, wait, the safety wasn't too high and the middle of the field was open, and now it's closed and the route that I thought was going to be there isn't. And now I have to get to another progression. And it's not like what we've seen through the preseason so far, which is I'm expecting this guy to be open. He's my first read. It's cover 3. That's what I'm getting pre-snap, post-snap. Yep, cover 3. He's open. Throw it. Eliminate that, and I really think this defense takes off. I don't think it needs a massive change.
You mentioned something there. Doing it more early in games. There's been so many instances with this team where they allow the opposite team, to really get on them early. And they're playing catch up throughout the rest of the game because of it. So yes, if we can do even that early in the game, throw a wrinkle at these offenses that they're not ready for, it will put them on their heels. Because you said before, this defensive philosophy is a passive one, and I know people are hearing passive defense. How is that possible with when you have a front 4 that's in attack mode all the time? But like you said, it's passive on the back end, and it's something that allows offenses to dictate the games. And just doing this small little thing can maybe bring the edge a little bit back in our favor.
And like I said, early in games, the important part for that too is then you can do something where you run it early in games, you show cover 2 and you rotate to cover 3. Later in the game, when you're actually running cover 2 and you're not disguising it, the team might think you're disguising it. They might think you're running a cover 3 instead, and they're going to call a play that's going to beat cover 3 instead of cover 2. And then it's post snap and it's, oh, wait, it was cover 2 and we called the wrong play. That bit of hesitation, that's what this scheme is built on, is creating hesitation in quarterbacks and taking away their time to think, to where the pass rush is going to be breathing down their neck. They're going to have to get the ball out early, and then we can have our guys come up and rally and tackle. Or the corners are going to be sticky. They're going to have their eyes on the passer. He's going to be rushed. He's going to throw a pass early. They're going to be able to jump and break on it and make a play. Help out your back end. Make it easier for them to do what they're supposed to do. Don't just give free answers to a quarterback. And you don't need a giant crazy change in philosophy. You don't need to fire Ulbrich and find a new defensive coordinator. You just need to do some things a little bit differently and add a little more doubt into offenses' minds so that they don't know what you're doing the second they come out of the huddle. Because when I tell you that when I watched that opening drive and I said, cover 3, okay, check. Next play, Falcons weren't even set yet. Cover 3, got it, check. And it was like that every single time. The Falcons put in any little motion check they wanted to confirm it, and the Jets fell for the bait like hook, line, and sinker. That needs to change. If that changes, I think we're going to see a big change in this defense and a big improvement in this defense. I am looking forward to seeing how the season goes, because I do think that might take a little bit of forcing them into it. But I'm hoping that we're going to have the talent in the secondary to pull this off. And I'm hoping that our coaching staff is going to see that it's necessary, because otherwise we might be in for another rough year.
Yeah, absolutely. So to sum up, or what I think to sum up what we both feel is to be concerned, but to have patience and to have trust in these guys who have had success everywhere they've been doing the same exact thing. Am I right with that?
No, you're right. They've earned the right to be trusted. They've earned the right to be given time. They've earned the right to add new players to this roster that was depth devoid of talent. And now we've seen players that they've added in spades that we haven't gotten to see in full force yet. There's reasons to be hopeful. There's reasons to be doubtful. But I don't think that we need to be firing our defensive coordinator. I don't think anyone who says, oh, Saleh doesn't know what he's doing and his defenses were always terrible is not telling the truth. Quite honestly, they're not. Because the only constant person as a member of a defensive scheme on every single team in the last 10 to 15 years that's run this defense and been successful at it, the only guy that's been at every single stop is Robert Saleh. That matters. It does. I'm sorry if people don't agree with that, but it's the truth.